Hi, I am Roxana Muzamel. I lost my dad to acute myeloid leukemia, AML, back in March 2011. I watched him struggle for 10 months due to outdated treatments and a lack of a cure. In doing so, I got to sponsor an AML research grant portfolio in my Leukemia and Lymphoma Society campaign last year. Also recently, I had hosted an event entitled A Meaningful Life, Raising Awareness and Research for Acute Myeloid Leukemia. I wanted to show you highlights from this event, and I hope that you will donate to this cause. Thank you so much for your time.
Right, and who is the gracious hostess of tonight's event. Just a few remarks I'd like to make. First, her campaign, which she did earlier this year, which I was involved in as a number of our other friends and acquaintances were, was really driven by trying to make something meaningful out of the unfortunate loss of her father to AML a couple of years ago. And we all worked very closely together in trying to make it happen. But really, Roxana, this event and the previous events that we've done together, she's been the driving force behind everything and has really been pulling all the threads together to make it happen. She's been involved with LLS over the last couple of years. She participated in the Light the Night walks both this year and last year. And as part of her Women of the Year campaign in the National Capital area, she was able to raise $96,000 for LLS. And it's tough competition out there. She only came up first runner-up, so you know, it's serious competition. Beth's doing a good job in this area. She also was able to, when we were doing that campaign, we really were focusing on trying to get her to the threshold of having her fund a grant in her father's memory. And not only did we surpass that, but I think today, 6-7 months later, we see with Scott in the room and with other AML survivors here, the continuum of activity that happens in order to take the effort and the funding that you pull together and then make a meaningful contribution in fighting these types of cancers.
My father was diagnosed with AML in April 2010 and passed away back in March 2011. Before he passed away in April 2010, the doctor said he only had 3 months to live, but he actually lived for 10 months after initial diagnosis. He was in and out of the hospital. Some days were hopeful, some days were not. For all the struggles that I had seen my father go through in his treatment protocol, I had been determined to try to help the best way that I can for LLS, so no other AML patient has to go through what my father went through. Even though I lost my dad to AML, I will not give up helping others. I will help others so that they can receive the help that they need to fight this battle with AML. Thank you all so much for coming to support me on this very important cause. AML, A Meaningful Life, and all those that have been affected by it. Whether it is that they passed away from AML or survived it, AML is still a very aggressive cancer that many people face.
Any type of disease, any chronic disease, but especially something as debilitating and potentially lethal as cancer, is that people hear about it happening to other people. So it's very difficult to empathize, put yourself in their position. It's an intellectual exercise that typically fails. So in reading about Sinan, it actually is very recent. I mean, he was a student attending American University in Cairo last year, was diagnosed December 2012, had to come back to the United States, underwent successful treatment at Holy Cross Hospital in Maryland, and now is re-enrolled at George Washington University. He's a really young guy, and I mean, I think he's gonna have some really good stuff to say, so please Sinan, come up here.
Thanks so much. I'd like to start off by thanking everyone for coming here tonight. Hope everyone's having a lot of fun. It's been fun. I'd like to thank Roxana. She's definitely an amazing person. Definitely an amazing person to meet. And before I even got diagnosed with leukemia, I never even heard of Roxana. I never heard of the great works the LLS has been doing. So as symptoms got worse, I had breathing problems, chest pain, and for being an athlete as myself, that's unusual. So I did a couple tests with my PCP, And it came out that results showed that my white cell count and my platelet levels were off the charts. So I went straight to the ER in Holy Cross Hospital, of course flying a 12-hour flight directly. And went straight to the ER, and 9 hours later I was in a hospital bed undergoing 7+3 chemotherapy, which is 7 days of Ara-C and 3 days of Arupacin, which is a very, very powerful chemotherapy drug. And luckily for me, I got into remission right away after 20 days, which is very, very quick, by the way. It's very rare that you get into remission that quickly. And then after that, I went to Johns Hopkins. They told me to do the 4-cycle, more chemotherapy. And they said that's the best way compared to a bone marrow transplant, which is what Roxana's father did, was because bone marrow transplant is very, very dangerous. You actually have a 15% chance of dying just by getting a transplant. And that's because of rejection and many, many other complications. And I don't have any brothers and sisters, so it's not really a high chance of survival. Anyway, I went through chemotherapy. I finished it pretty early. I actually finished it earlier than planned. Working out, eating well, and it changed my view of life. People, when they're young, they feel like they have 60 years to live. And then you realize that you actually don't have that long to live. One thing when I was going through treatment that I like to tell everyone, if you go through any treatment, such as leukemia, such as any disease, one thing that you should never do is never to give up, which is what Sarah showed. She never gave up to the last day, to the last breath of her father. And she still doesn't give up afterwards. And it's very powerful. You should never give up. And that's what I never gave up, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you so much.
Now, some letters that I haven't mentioned yet tonight, but mean so much to me. They're 3 simple letters that alone mean very little, but together represent hope, courage, support, and the relentless fight to eradicate blood cancers. Those 3 letters, LLS, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. After my diagnosis, I didn't know what to think or how to feel. I found myself asking very difficult questions that a 23-year-old shouldn't really be asking, or anyone for that matter. What would happen to my body? What would the side effects be? Would treatment work? Would I survive? Fortunately, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society was there to guide me through my diagnosis, my treatment, my recovery, and continue today through my survivorship. My first introduction to the LLS was just a simple education booklet. I was in the hospital, my nurse brought me this little booklet about the size of your programs tonight on AML, describing what is acute myeloid leukemia and how is it affecting you. A few months later, one of my nurses handed me an application for a copay assistance grant. That's one of the many patient services that the LLS offers. So I filled that out and was able to get assistance paying my copays. I also started attending a young adults with cancer support group, which at the time I had no idea was in any way connected to the LLS. I found out about a year and a half later, once I started getting more involved with the LLS, that that's actually funded and operated by a grant provided by our local LLS chapter. So these 3 things, these 3 small words, 3 letters, provided by the LLS, were indispensable to me during my journey, during my treatment.
I think the one thing I'd like to share with you is really our job is about cures and access. We want to find cures. We want to provide access to our patients and their families. That really is our goal. If you don't leave here with anything else, it really is about cures and access, but it takes dollars to do that. It takes money to fund the research and to get the access to our patients and families. I wanted to just highlight a couple of things for you all that we are doing for our patients that you may not know, which I think is really important. That's at the heart of this. Our goal is really to connect with every newly diagnosed patient within 30 days. We want to make sure that we are their first stop. They know that we are here to support them through their journey. We certainly provide the best resources, education, advocacy, support groups. We even have financial aid that we will provide to our patients and families. That's incredibly important. I did want to share with you as well that we do have a trial check that LLS manages an up-to-date database called Trial Check that really helps folks know what clinical trials are out there. That really can teach them if they maybe this is their last stop, if they're wanting to find something else, we can help them connect with those clinical trials that they may not have otherwise. Lastly, I want to tell you just a little bit about the Celator project, and again, Scott will be able to elaborate further, but it's a part of our therapy acceleration program, and in the last 4 years, LLS has found an innovative way to really help us bring these treatments to patients in a quicker way, get access for our patients. It's really an exciting program where we are partnering with pharmaceuticals. We're helping those diseases. As you all know, AML is a very specific, it's a small disease. It doesn't have a humongous population. So we are really, when someone's saying, hey, you know, it's not like heart, it's not like some of the breast cancers, our population is just smaller there, but they're people and their lives, and our job is to help save those lives. So if we can get those treatments to bear, then they are out there for our patients and families. So this has been an incredibly exciting partnership, particularly with Celator.
So now it's time for our featured guest and speaker. Scott Jackson is the CEO and president of Celator Pharmaceuticals. Just a few data points about Scott. He and I had a chance to get acquainted with one another earlier this evening. He was appointed his current position as CEO in April 2008, shortly after joining the company in October 2007. He's had extensive experience in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, holding a number of different senior positions in sales, marketing, and commercial development. Scott is now going to come up here and talk about CPX351, this therapy that we've been talking about. And as you go through his presentation, this is precisely the example of the type of collaboration we were talking about earlier. And this is not some sort of intellectual, oh, if you support LLS, maybe some of the money will go to do something good for somebody. This is, I mean, as a campaign manager for Roxana's campaign earlier this year, this is now very fulfilling for us to see Scott here talking about something that she was able to fund. So please, Scott.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. Particular thanks to Roxana for inviting me. I should say thank you to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society for supporting Celator. Thank you for those that have donated to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. You'll see some of the work that we've been conducting at Celator that is a direct result of those contributions. And thank you to those that are considering becoming donors to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. As you see on the title slide, it truly is a partnership that we have Celator with the LLS. What they realized is that the bottleneck really truly was translating that research into drugs for patients. And so they created this therapy acceleration program. And we were very fortunate. In 2009, LLS reported our phase 2 clinical development for CPX351. Now, CPX351 combines two drugs, arguably the two most active drugs for the treatment of AML, cytarabine and daunorubicin. It's called the 7-3 moniker. You heard Brian eloquently describe that that's what he was treated with. The reason it's called 7-3 is the cytarabine is a 7-day continuous infusion. The patient's walking around hooked up to an infusion pump for 7 days. And the daunorubicin is administered on days 1, 2, and 3. Hence, they call it the 7-3 regimen. But I want you to understand that those two drugs have been the standard of care for more than 30 years. Nothing's come along to displace that as the standard of care. So again, same two drugs, and I was talking with other survivors earlier this evening that were used 5 years ago, 19 years ago, 30 years ago, are the same two drugs that patients are being treated with today. And our goal with CPX351 is we want to become that new standard of care. We want to replace the 7-3 regimen and give patients new treatment options. Now, back in 2008, we had done what's called phase 1 clinical testing. There are basically 3 phases of clinical testing a drug has to go through before you can seek FDA approval. Phase 1, you're looking to establish the safety of the drug and to identify a dose that you can test for efficacy or clinical benefit. Phase 2 is early demonstration of that clinical benefit, and phase 3 is really confirmation of that clinical benefit. So we had completed a phase 1 study. We were very encouraged by the results, and we were getting ready to start phase 2. And we wanted to study the drug in multiple phase 2 settings to try and figure out the broadest potential patient population it could provide a benefit in. And that's when we approached the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, because we were made aware of the TAP program. I think we were the 4th company to actually have ever received sponsorship from the TAP program. But I'm pleased to tell you, as Beth had mentioned earlier, not only did the LLS support our phase 2 clinical development program, but the results were positive, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And now we're in our last stage of clinical testing, and LLS is supporting that as well. In terms of complete remission, what we saw with standard of care, the 7-3 regimen, was 32% of the people got into complete remission. With CPX 351, it went up to 58%. So it's not only the complete remission, but I'll show you some of the other data in a moment. It's really a compilation of a lot of variables. In terms of early deaths as a result of either the disease or the treatment itself, what you saw with 7-3 is 32%, almost a third of the patients died within the first 60 days, either because you couldn't get your disease under control or because of the treatment itself. With CPX 351, it was 6%. So it's 1/5. So now we're getting more patients into remission, fewer patients are dying as a result of the disease or the treatment. And so then the question becomes, well, how's that translate into survival? The number of patients alive at 1 year with 7-3 was roughly 20%. 22% of the people were alive at 12 months. With CPX 351, it was more than half the patients were alive at 12 months. The median survival went from 6 months to 12 months. We doubled it. And now we're looking to confirm those findings in a phase 3 setting. What we're seeing is we're getting more patients to clear the leukemia, leading to higher remission rates. We're seeing an improvement in early deaths. We're seeing an improvement in what's called event-free survival and an improvement in overall survival. However, those improvements across both studies now seem to be greater in poor risk patients or poor prognosis patients. We think that there's a much broader opportunity for CPX 351 as a treatment for AML. We're initially focusing in on that secondary AML market because we think that that's the highest probability for success, but also represents the fastest path for us to get this drug approved and hopefully available to patients. So the phase 3 study, I mentioned earlier that I was pleased to tell you that it's up and running. We started enrolling patients in December of 2012. We are on track to complete enrollment by the end of 2014. We expect initial data coming out in the second quarter of 2015, but the primary endpoint is a comparison in overall survival, and we're projecting that that would be available in the first quarter of 2016. And if successful, then we would file our what's called a new drug application with the FDA in the second half of 2016, and hopefully have the product available to patients in the beginning part of 2017. So although we're in the middle of phase 3, I just wanted to make sure that people understood, it is a fairly lengthy process, but that's the timeline that we're marching towards right now. Now, one of the things that I always like to say is that this really is a collaborative effort. If it wasn't for LLS, we couldn't have done the extensive phase 2 work that we've already conducted. We wouldn't have seen all the benefits that we're generating at this point in time. It truly is a partnership. And the one thing that I really want to drive home for folks is it's great to have the financial support. I remind people, our mission is to improve and extend the lives of patients with cancer, period. It really underscores when I hear these stories. I make sure I recruit Brian to come up and talk to our employees to remind them why we do what we do every single day. So I want to, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I will hang out, particularly if there's any questions that people want to ask me about the partnership that we have. But I really can't underscore enough that to thank you again for the support that we've received, to thank you for the contributions that you've made to LLS, and to thank you for those that are considering becoming donors for LLS. Greatly appreciated. It's going to good work. And although I shouldn't have ended on this note, I also wanted I neglected to point it out during the presentation, wanted to tell you that they're extremely fiscally responsible with the money that they invest. In fact, earlier today, we had quarterly research advisory committees with LLS, letting them know exactly where we're at in terms of our clinical development program, because they're making sure that we're delivering on the milestones that we said we would. And if we're successful, there will be a return going back to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, which in return, they'll put to work via the TAP program. And I think it's important for you to know that it's not just LLS kind of writing a check and hoping we do well. They're monitoring what we're doing, and if we're successful, there will be a return back to LLS so that it can help companies that are in the same situation as Celator. So again, I thank you for your time and attention tonight, and I will be available if there's any questions that you may have. So thank you.